I mean, we've known about that. You said when you were doing your economics 101 and everything,
Absolutely.
it was there. It was very clear that these were the issues we have. Up until today, we are still struggling with the same old issues. I've never seen a report in this country yet that does not blame access to credit and the cost of credit as an issue that has to be tackled.
Okay.
And so, how do we fix the access to credit issue? And here, let's very quickly, the Bank of Ghana has asked all the banks to raise their nominal capital by the end of 2012 to 60 million.
60 million Ghana
60 million Ghana cedis.
Yeah.
Now, this will force the banks to actually put some cash into it, and hopefully, the only way they can recover that money is when they lend more money into the system.
Okay.
So there's at least that attempt. Bank of Ghana is also hoping that by forcing the issue, some banks will merge, and you have seen it happening already.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Access and Intercontinental. Amal Bank being taken over by Bank of Africa. Then you've got EcoBank buying out TTB.
That's right.
Trust Bank. And then very soon something will happen with NIB, I hope. I've been going on about NIB for so long now. I think it's about time that something significant happened to NIB.
There's something we heard about merchants, but I don't know what happened to it.
Nothing happened yet, but something could happen because it's still a very small bank comparatively.
Yes.
Now, if you have a few banks, but they are huge, the competition it gets a little keener.
It does.
And then there's and it makes a lending a lot more available. In Canada, for example,
and they are able to fund or finance
because
projects.
They have more money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Canada has only 3 banks.
I see. I didn't know that.
And it's a bigger economy than ours.
Oh, by far.
Okay. And the way it works is that they then go for volume with smaller margins.
Okay.
So they make a better killing because they lend more money into the system, and that makes it work better. So hopefully we should be able to get there. Nigeria at one point had 129 banks. Now they are left with somewhere between 17 and 19 banks.
Because they also raised the minimum capital requirements.
They did theirs very, very quickly, immediately.
And it's still much higher than ours.
It's much, much higher than ours.
That's right. And that's what even got some of them to come to Ghana. Yeah. Because they could deal with the 60 million that was in the future for them.
And of course the spreads here.
Absolutely.
The cost of borrowing the money and the cost of lending the money out is a lot bigger here in Ghana. So it's more profitable for them to come here, which is why they're really here.
Okay. So before we leave manufacturing, Sydney, we can deal with this topic, in fact, within the whole hour. Yeah. And unfortunately, we have to move on. But I don't know how we can begin to get credit. I don't know how we can reduce the cost of it. I don't know how we can deal with taxation being too high, utility prices outrageous, and these are things that cut across. Because when you begin to look at all the other areas, we see that there is, especially services, people in the service industry are also complaining about high level of utility prices, etc., and all of that. So it's a matter that we all have to deal with. Purchasing power is not there. What can we do to turn around the manufacturing sector? Because we need to turn it around.
Wow, that's a big question. I'm not sure I can answer it in the time that is left, but I think that the key things government has to figure out how it can, how should I say, like when your car runs out of petrol, you have to find some 1 gallon from somewhere to put into it to kickstart it.
At least to the next filling station. Right.
So you need a pump primer. You need something that will prime it. Okay. In the good old days, they used to start the car by turning that crank it. So you need something that will crank that economy and then put it there. Right. And for me, the way to do it is by government focusing on infrastructure. Okay. There has to be large infrastructure development, which will enable people to get work. Okay. When that work comes in, local businesses will then be able to supply certain specific things into that economy. Okay. Say, for example, somebody is a quarry. Right. There's a huge road network that is being developed. The Eastern Corridor network is being developed. Right. He gets a chance to actually supply stone into to that. So he then looks at employing more people. Then there's all the housing that develops along the highways and the motorways. So there are synergies in doing just one single project. That brings about all sorts of attachments as you move along. Okay. If you watch very carefully, one of the best judges of, and I should call this real estate, all right, are the microeconomy people, the kioskenomics. Right. Okay, the minute a housing development starts or a road starts, they find a way of putting their kiosks.
They localize.
They know that the people who are coming to work on it, they are going to come and borrow kenke and fish and wache and cocoa every morning, and immediately they start appearing. They are the biggest ways to monitor the economy. The number of them that actually set up in that vicinity is an indication that there's money to be spent in that vicinity. Because
we have so many of them in Legon and places like that, near Trasaco, etc. Because there's construction work
going on. All right. So government needs to prime it. And I will say here, in fact, when we talk about agriculture, I think I'll make the point even more, that government should stop thinking about huge mechanized automated systems. All right, we are not a huge capital economy.
Okay.
We are a labor-intensive economy. We have more people who want to work and need to work than we need to put one combined harvester somewhere that will farm 100 acres of land. That's work for only one person.
Okay.
We want work for 1,000 people at a time, not the one.
So are you suggesting that instead of using the combined harvester, that we should let 100 people farm?
At this stage of our economy, let 100 people farm. Let them farm, let them get some money, let them spend it so it trickles down and goes into various other places.
Okay.
If you have somebody who's farming and selling their produce and they make money, they will buy bread, they will build a house, they will buy clothes, they will entertain themselves, they will do all the other things that will create add-on value to everybody else who is there.
Before we go, let me deal with this before we move on to agriculture. I was watching a documentary today on the History Channel, very interesting, about how oil was first struck in the U.S.
Right.
And the efforts that were put in and having to dig 136 feet down into the earth and all over that, and for time, 3 brothers. And the investors getting tired and at some point saying, okay, we can go this more, and if you don't find it, that's the end of it.
Right.
And they finally managed to strike it. That was 1901, 03, 04, thereabout. And the oil that gashed out was so strong that for 3 or 4 days they could not keep it up. And then, but that was what brought about the whole turnaround. Once they hit that in the US and found out there were those volumes that they had, Henry Ford popped up from somewhere. He had been trying to manufacture cars for a very long time. There were only about 38,000 vehicles in the whole of the US at that time.
Yep.
And then he began to do the mass production thing. He started the whole concept of mass production.
Yes.
Started doing his T1 or so, Ford.
Ford Model T.
Absolute Model T. Did the Model T, put it in place. All over the place, people could afford vehicles, etc. And then there was that movement. Do you see any situation where we can begin such a manufacturing based on anything? Can we even have an assembly plant of, say, of vehicles for the whole of West Africa? We know that if you want certain vehicles, South Africa is a base for Africa. It's still very difficult traveling, even within Africa, than just going to Europe in so many places. If I want to go to London, it could be cheap. If I want to go to Cameroon, I'll pay so much, and all that. Is it possible for us to form that kind of a hub for manufacturing, getting labor, etc., as you say, for our sub-region? Is it practical?
Yes. At one stage in our life, in the 72, 73, 74 era, we had Coast Motors. It was assembling golf cars here.
Right.
All right. The evidence is still there. The buildings are still there.
Right.
So we did do it. We are capable of doing it. At one point, we had buses, didn't we? We were assembling, buses, coaches. Was it near Tatabri? What's the name of that company? God, skips my mind. Okay. But yes, the answer to your question is just because Nigeria does Peugeot cars.
It does Peugeot
South
cars.
Africa does BMWs and Mercedes-Benz.
Mercedes-Benz, all the C-Class for Africa is in South Africa.
However, how do you do it when your power goes off every 30 minutes and every 2 hours?
Okay.
Why would I set up a plant? Why would any investor come into a country and say, oh, I want to set up a manufacturing assembly plant without investigating the power supply and how stable it is? It's a problem.
It is.
So in order to get that working and get it going, we have to stabilize the power supply system. We are trying to increase our power capacity from the current 2,300 megawatts to 5,000 megawatts.
Right.
And we're trying to do it in so many different ways. Now, when we get there, it's not only the increase in the output, it's the actual stability of the transmission lines.
Okay.
You can't afford blowouts. You can't afford the lines to go down. Right. You must have a system that guarantees continuous power.
So we have not put in place the things that we need as a premise base for doing these things. That's how come we're unable. I mean, look at Casanoma. That was Philips.
A long time ago.
Philips.
We had an assembly plant.
Top quality brand.
Absolutely.
We're putting together a Casanoma radio, wireless TV, etc. in Ghana, right here.
Yes.
Assembling all of these things.
Yes.
So we've moved backwards.
Well, we've stepped back a little. Sometimes you have to retreat in order to be able to move forward.
Okay.
One thing that we have done is we have made sure that our democracy has survived.
It's a good thing.
And that has become a cornerstone for what we are trying to do now.
Okay.
So anybody who reads about Ghana, the first thing they hear is Ghana is a democracy, and it's a stable democracy, and it's an economy that is growing.
In political philosophy, there's always a debate as to whether politics should lead economics or economics should lead politics. And it's a debate that will not be resolved anytime soon, because the finest of brains disagree on this matter.
Yeah.
And you talk about us consolidating our political gains. But then the CRC, before we came in, you were mentioning that the Constitution Review Commission said that we should perhaps refocus from politics to economics, making it lead. Is it because we took the route of politics leading the way to economics and that we are now at the point where economics will step in?
The mantra in the 50s and 60s, when the CPP was reigning, was seek ye first the political kingdom, and everything else shall be added onto it.
Interesting statement attributed to Osagyefo Nkrumah.
And I come to the point now where I say, I think we have finished the search. I think we are done with the politics. I think we understand the politics now. I think we have enough political head-to-head knocking to say that the opposition, whoever it is not going to allow the current government to get away with anything. Look at what we're looking at now in terms of all the issues that are going on in the country, the cocaine issue, the Woyome issue that has come up, all the others that have cropped up, the issue of the judges, and there's been so much. The fact of the matter is, whoever has been in opposition in their time has not allowed the government to get away with it. And I think that at this stage, we have to accept as a country that we understand how to create political agitation and how to manage it. We understand how to counter political rhetoric from both sides, and we understand very clearly how not to allow the other party to get away with it. So let's agree that we have arrived there, and it will continue. It has to, it's not just going to stop. It will continue throughout the fabric of our development. But it is now time for us to decide very, very firmly that economics and development and finance and money is the next step of our development. When we have done that, there will be another development, and we will get there. We've already crossed the spiritual divide. We've done that. So now we've done the politics. Now let's do the economics. And I agree completely with the Constitution Review Commission. I'm not the first person to have said it. Many people have said it before me. But I say every time I get the opportunity, we have to stop the politics, stop the damaging politics, and get on to looking at the economy and getting it on track.
So let's move to agriculture. And I realize that access to credit, higher cost of raw materials, cost of credit emerged as a top 3 factors limiting the growth of this sector. That is what this document says. Of course, this is still AGI, but it's touching on agriculture as well. What do you make of this?
Well, agriculture is the classic example of people needing medium to long-term funds. When you grow a crop, if it's a tree crop, you know it's not going to mature for 5 years. What do you do whilst that crop is growing? You have to do other cash crops. You have to do other food crops. So the period of growth is always significant in agriculture. And in nearly every developed economy, agriculture is a protected species in the economy. America subsidizes its agriculture to a large extent. Europe has been known to spill milk in order to be able to reduce the buffer stock of milk in the system in order to be able to continue agricultural subsidies. In China, in Japan, they subsidize agriculture extensively. It is their staple, it's the way to go. We have to develop it. But when you go to those economies where we always like to make a huge brouhaha about, they encourage peasant farming. They encourage the small-scale farmer. They encourage the rural communities to grow the food because that's where the food is. You're not going to get anybody growing food in Accra significantly in order to be able to supply the urban market. It all comes from the hinterland. It comes from the rural communities. So we have to focus on doing that. But we cannot afford to destroy those small peasant farmers because we want to mechanize agriculture and we want to increase the throughput. You can still increase the throughput. You might not increase the per acre yield. The yields might not be there. But what it does is that it gives people the opportunity to be employed. It gives them the opportunity to do something. And that is the critical thing in an economy of our era. Even as America is complaining now, even as Europe is complaining now, what is their key factor? Jobs, 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 jobs. Why do you therefore go and take a potential 100 jobs and condense it into one combined harvester and sit one person on there and he will harvest 100 acres? I would have 100 people harvesting 1 acre at a time than have one person harvesting 100 acres. In that direction, I think government has got that policy wrong. We have to really rethink that policy and see how best we can make it work. You can encourage farmers to increase their per hectare yield or their per acre yield by giving them improved seedlings, by giving them improved facilities and encouraging them to do something and then fixing the roads so they can bring the food produce from inside down to the urban sector where they can sell it. If you improve the feeder roads, if you improve the network for them, they will be able to bring their goods at a cheaper price. And then if we fix the main roads, the highways, we will be able to bring that produce from the farmland to the city center without destroying half of it because of the pothole.